Welcome back to Timo's Dinky Detailing. Today I'll be working on restoring a Dinky 472 Austin van. So here's the van. Uh, so it's been well played with. I was looking at this thing and thinking it's interesting that it has a blue front, whereas the other ones all have a green one. I thought this was some rarity, but now it looks like a child painted the front portion blue over top of the green. You can see the green right through it. So this one, the tires are in bad shape. Actually, before filming this, I put two new tires on the front. It didn't have any front tires, and the back ones are hardened and appear to be um, unsalvageable. So I'll have to replace those. So on this model, I decided I'm not going to go too far with it. I'm going to try and do it as a restoration again. I haven't done one of those in a while, but I will have a little bit of customizing. And I'm not thrilled with this. Maybe when I get the next one, I'll make it into a shell. I think it was shell on this one, but I'll be making this one into a Raleigh, and we'll talk about that later. So here it is. You can see it's scraped up. It's got some rust on the bottom, which is pretty normal, and it's obviously chipped, so it's going to need to be stripped and repainted. Now, first thing I do is I'm going to go and drill out. There's a single rivet, and the front is held on with kind of a hook on the sheet metal. And so first thing is, in this case, it's going to go into the milling machine. I've tried all different sorts of ways of drilling these rivets out, and they all wind up as a catastrophe unless I go to the milling machine. And so I have it, so I'm going to continue probably from now on doing all of them with the milling machine. I can line up the toy in the exact right spot and drill it out, and then I can also, while it's in that spot, I can also drill it out for a thread so that I can put it back together with a small 440 button head screw. You can see it's a little bit of trouble getting that thing out, and I can assure you it's also trouble getting it back in. So here I'm drilling for a 440 screw, and you can see the casting moved a little bit. Still got to figure out a way of holding these castings so that they don't tilt like that. I don't want to squeeze so much on the vise that it could damage the casting, so I have to find some way of having a conforming bottom so that it doesn't get any leverage to move like that. So here I'm using my centering tool on the tap, and it's a spring-loaded little plunger. It has a little cup on the end of that shaft that sticks out, and it's on a spring, so it keeps the thing lined up exactly with the hole, and the spring pushes it out so it stays there. And in this case I'm using again a spiral flute tap, which as it cuts, the swarf comes out of the hole instead of being pushed down to the bottom like my normal spiral point taps. So there's one of the wheels that fell in there. Didn't even notice it until I took it out of the vise. So here we have it. First I'm going to put a screw in there so when I'm stripping paint and doing other things, that hole won't get filled up with crud. Now you can see that wheel or tire is in very rough shape, and there's no way to get it other than to cut the thing off. It's still pretty firm in there, and it wouldn't break just on my finger action, so I had to bring some tools in to get involved with that. So I'm going to take my axles off. I'm not using a Dremel tool like most restorers would. I like to do it with the file. I have more control over it, and I find that it takes a little longer to file around that thing, but if you compare it with the time it takes to go get the Dremel tool and put a bit on it and then grind it and then put that Dremel tool away again, I can do it just as fast with the file. So I'm putting them on one axle so that I can strip the paint off of them all at once. So into the plastic bucket it goes, and then this is outside now, because I don't like that caustic soda smell going into the house. So boiling water goes in, some caustic soda, and this is the fast way to remove paint off of these models. Somebody was warning me that it could possibly damage the casting. I would like more information if somebody knows if it actually can dissolve the metal casting. I haven't noticed it, but I did have a model that was very pitted, and I wonder if it wasn't caused by the caustic soda, but it would have to be some different casting alloy that was used on one day or something, because most of them don't have any trouble. So this primer that I'm putting there is a special primer. It's an etching primer, and just by coincidence it's green. Here I'm putting for the base, it's a satin black paint. Now I've got to sand this thing because the casting is pretty good, but it's not completely smooth. Fortunately the primer goes and fills a lot of those gaps. So the base is done with a satin black Krylon paint that I really like, and in between I had some other paints, and they would take 2 days to stop being sticky. So I went back to the Krylon paint in about an hour. It's not sticky at all. So the wheels are getting yellow paint. That's the original with the Raleigh cycles. Now I'm saying Raleigh because I looked it up on the internet. If you talk with people in North America, Canada, US, they say Raleigh because they have a city in North Carolina called Raleigh. But when the British talk about Raleigh cycles, they say Raleigh. And British and Australians both use that. So I'm going with Raleigh. I like that better, even though in my youth we called them Raleigh. So I've already painted green. You just watched me painting it, and you're probably looking at it and going, that's lighter than the original model. It definitely is too light. So I'm going to go back, and I mixed up some green, and I added a little black to it. I did one where I mixed blue with it thinking that would work, but it made it too bluish, and it needs to be a real olive type of green and darker. You can see it's darker there, but you can't see quite so well. I find that the digital cameras are not that good at showing what the actual color is under all lighting conditions. So if you have different lighting, it's going to look different each time. So this actually looks a little lighter than it actually comes out, but you'll see later on in the video, I think you can see that it's darker. Now here's one of the axles. It's bent. So the best way to straighten these things is with a hammer. So I go on the vise and I tap it. You don't need much, and you can straighten it out absolutely perfectly. So I'm going to be using a technique. I don't like to hammer on these axles anymore after the model is already done, or at least the base is already done. You've got to hammer on it. So I'm going to be putting it in the lathe. This is a 5C collet, and it's a 5/16. It's for that copper or brass sleeve that I made, because nobody makes such a thing. And you can see the problem is the axle just falls out the back of the collet. So I've got to use a collet stop. And this goes on the back of the collet, and you can adjust that shaft that goes inside to get it to the right depth. So this was set up for the previous job that I was doing. So let's just see how close it is. Put it in, and it goes into the collet a little bit too much. So I'm going to loosen up this locking nut and tighten it up a little bit. So I can just turn that screw until the shaft sticks out just a little bit from the collet. I want it to have as much support as possible, because if you leave it sticking out, you can easily bend it while you're trying to drill it. Now that's holding the axle from moving back, but the collet, the little inner collet that I made, I just have to put it in position, and when it gets clamped down, it'll stay where it is. It won't have any pressure on it directly, only through the axle, but the axle will be stopped, so it won't actually have really any axial pressure. So I didn't file this one flat before putting it in, so a few strokes makes it nice and flat, and this is my smallest center drill. And I go in and I make a little dimple. Actually, I went fairly deep with it, because I want to make sure that the drill is going to be on center. The center drill doesn't wander, but if you put in a tiny drill, it can bend, and so it won't necessarily drill straight on center. So this makes sure that it gets started on center, and if it starts on center, it'll stay that way. So here's the tiny little drill I'm using. Now, the purpose of this is to avoid hammering, so I'm actually going to drill this out, and you're going to see I have a mushroom head that I'm going to glue into this, so I don't have to hammer at an already finished model. So that's the drilling. I'm showing you this one in detail. I'm going to be showing little bits in detail so people can see. I did another one in a fair bit of detail. So now this comes out, and you can see there's a little hole in the end. So that worked out perfectly. Now these are ones I made in a different episode, so I won't be showing how I made those. I'll put a link to the other video where I show how I made this. These are made from little stamped cheap nails that you would hang a picture on the wall with. Now I decided I'm going to put an interior, so I did a little bit of customizing. This was the first try at this thing. I modified it once, made the thing a little bit wider, and in this case I printed the steering wheel straight into the interior. And all that structure in behind, because this is kind of hanging in air, I needed to have it so it would stay in position. So I had to go all the way to the back of the van, to the sides, and to the ceiling. Now I've discovered another trick I could do with this model. This is thin plastic from the box of Christmas cards, and it's nice plastic for using as a windshield. I'm not going to have any glass in the side windows. It's like the windows are open. It's been being used in the summer, so they just kept the windows open. And I modeled in on the 3D printed part a little slot for the windshield to fit in, and it's perfect. It holds the windshield right in, and it's very, very simple. So I'm going to be painting this interior yellow. Somebody said to use pink primer if you're going to be painting yellow, so I thought I'd try it out. I'm not sure if it worked that well, but in the end I didn't really get too frustrated with trying to get proper covering, so maybe it helped. I don't know. If somebody has any ideas on ways of priming a yellow that'll make it easier to paint, because yellow's difficult with all these little corners. So I've got the whole thing painted, steering wheel, the shift knob, and I cut the plastic earlier, and now I glue it in. I'm gluing it in this case with a bit of white glue, and I'm leaving it to dry overnight. I was worried if I used some harsher glue it might melt the plastic. So here's the decals, or decals, sorry, I got from either from Steve Flowers Model Supply, or from Black Circles, or I think it's from Model Supply though. So I got these a long time ago, and that's why I wanted to do this model with the Raleigh Cycles logo on the side. These are very, very nice decals. They're the top quality ones, and when you cut them out, you cut around the actual decal. The decal is shaped like the printed surface, so it doesn't go all the way to the edge of the paper, so that's kind of nice. If I wanted to print one of these myself, I probably could get the, I think you can get a gold, this is kind of a metallic gold toner for toner cartridge. I thought I saw one of those once, but if they already make the decal, I'm just going to buy it. So here I'm putting, these are the usual O-rings that I use, and I should really put a link there. I'll put a link in the text of where I get these from. I get them from Amazon. It gives you the sizes and everything. So these are used for some plumbing application, which is a good thing because then it's fairly easy to get these things in a big bag. And I have a bag of 50. There's 4 left after this job. So here's my nail that's been machined. I've cut it shorter. It has been machined so the head is more like a mushroom shape. And I'm using epoxy here, and it's a little bit tricky pushing it in because the epoxy creates an airlock and it wants to push it back out. So there you go. It looks like a beautiful mushroom, and I didn't have to hammer away at the with where the base could get damaged. Now I'm going to be doing the front grille. I was looking at some images of original Dinky models, and some of them they're painted in different ways. And one of them was that the entire front, the entire grille on the front, was painted silver with a spray paint. They used to use like a cardboard mask that was different for each model, and it would kind of fit the contours of the body, and then they would spray it. So you had this little bit of overspray in all these models. And so I've taped the whole thing up, and a couple of squirts of the silver spray, and I had to touch up a little bit with the fine sandpaper, and there I have the chrome on the front. I did it differently on the Nestle van that I did before, and I think it's better on the Nestle van. I went and I looked at how the actual van looks like, and most of the grille is actually the color of the body, and there's just a few tiny stripes of probably polished aluminum or something that give it some grill-like look. So probably less would be better. But anyway, this is one of the ways that Dinky had painted it. So I'm putting some basic details, hinges, door handles, and that interesting British style of tail light. I don't know how you drive at night and you've just got that one little light, and then I guess the light that illuminates the number plate. So just a little bit of detail. I didn't want to overdo it, but I figured I've already gone far enough to make an interior. I might as well dress it up just a little bit. And I like to put a number plate on these things. And I'm going to be using a black number plate with white letters, but I need to print it on a clear Decal paper, so I have to put a white background. So I put just plain white Decal paper unprinted as a background, and then I put my clear one with the black outline, and then the letters all look like they're white because it's just showing the white through it. And I'd be interested if anybody knows what the reference is for that particular number plate that I just put on there. So here's where we began. So it's a nice model, and casting wasn't damaged at all, just it was repainted, it was chipped up. Let's see what it looks like now. Well, that's the kind of toy you would see at the store when you would look into the behind the glass panel, and the toy is there, and it would have a number on it, and you would say, "Mister, I want to buy model number 23," or maybe it was the model, maybe it was whatever the actual Dinky toy number was. And then the store clerk would go and he would open the bottom of the cabinet, and he'd pull out a yellow box, and inside the yellow box you would open it up, and there was purple tissue wrapped around the Dinky toy, and you would unwrap it and you would see a beautiful toy like this, which you would take home and proceed to destroy over the years. but that's why I'm here, to make them look good again. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Timo's Dinky Detailing. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. I'm getting close to being able to monetize my channel, so by all means subscribe. I've got beautiful videos coming up, and you're not going to want to miss those. So until next time, be seeing you.